cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. My name is Sunny. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Isaac Asimov. How are you doing today?
That's none of you are going to get to hear that conversation. I am good.
What conversation? What are you talking about?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I am
That's
good.
That's what I'm talking about. My hawk. Yeah, my man. That's
Cross my heart and hope to die. I'm good.
Yeah.
I just got back from Vancouver this morning. I had a massive nap, and I'm ready to get back into the swing of non-YCS life.
So naps are always W's, so that's wonderful. I'm very happy for you. Why don't I go through the sponsorship reads, and then after that, you're going to tell us all about YCS Vancouver and your experience, and only the good parts, right? Because everything was good, right? Everything was spectacular.
Hunky-dory.
All right. So, of course, we want to thank all of our sponsors. So a huge thank you to, of course, Tier 0 Games. If you want 5% off of your order and free shipping on orders over $50, because they are international. They're UK-based, but you can get free shipping on orders over $50. Just click the link in the description down below. They do pre-orders on new product. They're one of the first sites to do pre-orders. So if something new is coming out, check them out. Also, of course, we want to thank Gem Accessories. I think it's 10% off of your order if you use our link, something like that. Or, I don't know, man. It's like 5 or 10%. It's hard to keep track of. Be sure to use Dragon Shield and TCG Player affiliate links. Of course, those are down below. Just click them before you shop to support the show at nothing extra to you. And, of course, thank you to Steelfox and ETB Games for their continued support of the podcast. Those are my locals. Those are my choice of game stores in Shreveport and Alexandria. If you're going, please be sure to tell them I sent you. Or they have their TCG pages down below. So, with that said, let's go ahead, get on into the podcast. After I thank our patrons, I almost forgot, but I didn't. So huge thank you to our patrons for their continuous support of the podcast. If you want the extra episode every week, it's $5 and up. For that, if you just want your name in the podcast at the end, it's $1 and up. So with that said, Skyhawk, go ahead. The floor is yours. Tell us all about your experience at YCS Vancouver.
I have got the floor. So we can talk about the meta a little bit later. I just want to talk about the event itself because this is the first time that there's been a YCS in Vancouver. For those who do not know, I am from Alberta, and having a YCS this close to us is amazing. There were probably 30 players from the Edmonton area that went to that event. One of them got top 8. Shout out to Blake Morrison, the lone Kashtira player in top 8.
Okay, yeah, but let's be honest here. Blake Morrison is not just an Edmonton native player that did well at this one event. He also topped Nats and the 250th. And I mean, he's a very well-known, very good player.
True. But that, and I gotta say,
still congrats, but
yeah. Vancouver, the venue was fantastic. The Vancouver Convention Center was super cool. It's right on the harbor. It's very similar to Niagara, actually, where it's by the falls. But this venue is awesome. It was massive. There was lots of space. There was lots of food nearby at like a whole bunch of different price ranges. There's a sushi place called Miku that we went to the first night that we went there. A little on the pricey side, but absolutely incredible. There was a whole, actually I might talk about that a bit later. But there's tons of food at different availability. Public transportation is cheap and easy to use. I think between myself, my twin brother, and my friend Kevin, who also went, shout out to Sentai and Troner Bonner on Twitter. It's a Marvel reference. It's Tron Bon.
Hey, that's fine. But I'll accept it. It's Twitter. Anything goes.
So each of us probably spent $40 on transit the entire weekend. You just get a pass, tap, you go on the train. If you're willing to walk 10 minutes, you can get anywhere by the train. It was just an unbelievably smooth experience. I know Tombox on Twitter posted, like, hey, what were your thoughts? I gave like kind of a more detailed version of my thoughts there, but incredible. They got to have one here again. It's absolutely fantastic. In terms of the event itself, I did not do so hot. I took Unchained Fluffle, and I had to drop round 3. My opponent called the judge. So this is actually an interesting conversation. I spoke with Ease pretty extensively about this after it happened. Fusion Enforcers has a print issue. So the super rares from Fusion Enforcers have a really bad warping problem. And I have never been someone who has double sleeved. So my opponent called the judge.
Secrets too.
The secrets too. And it turns out my Fluffle Dogs were too warped, and you could tell the difference between where they were in the deck. And not to mention, like, a lot of my deck was warped as well. The judge who came over and issued the marked cards penalty essentially said, like, asked me where I lived. I said Alberta, and they were like, oh yeah, it's humid. You need like silica packs in your deck box. And I had literally never heard of doing this. But apparently if you
Wait, really?
Yes. No, legit.
Oh, see, that's something that a lot of people do in Louisiana because of the humidity.
I have never encountered that, and until recently, like, that's not been an issue in Alberta, but because of the forest fires and the weather, how it's changed, like, it started to get really humid, like, these last 2 years, right? Especially, like, this summer, like, exactly. So,
okay. Yeah,
so
makes
I
sense.
hadn't even, like, begun to think about it, but they were like, okay, so you're getting a game loss, and you have 10 minutes to replace the cards, and none of the vendors had Fluffle Dog or Fluffle Octopus, so I had to drop.
Oh man.
And if I had thought
brutal.
to check it before, I could have tried to find another copy of Octopus, or I could have tried to find the Megatin reprints of Fluffle Dog, because those are rare and they don't have the warping problems. But
Right.
Part of the reason that Fluffle Penguin is so expensive, even though it's not widely played, is because near mint copies are hard to find because almost all of them are warped. My penguins, luckily, were okay. So I had to drop at round 3, and that was heartbreaking because Outback and the Necrofusion enthusiasts and Synapse and Ease and everybody put probably hundreds of hours into this list. I have zero problem losing after putting that amount of work in. But to go out because an opponent wanted a free win is brutal. Luckily for me, that guy did not get rewarded. He lost the next 2 rounds and then dropped. So there was that.
I'm sorry,
However,
I shouldn't cheer for other people's losses, but you know.
in this case, I'm happy about it. That dude was a scumbag. But I still had a great weekend. My twin brother did, and Kevin did a fantastic job of bringing me back up to spirits and cheering me up. Kevin played Vanquish Soul, went 2-1-2, played against a VIP round 4 and ended their tournament run. It was a Labyrinth player who was very aggressively slow playing the entire match. And because they were slow playing, game 1 took like 41 minutes. And then Kevin went Borger Effect, and it was a draw. And nice. So that dude was like 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, and they packed it up. And then my twin brother played Nouvelles. For those who don't know my twin brother, like I said, at Tronarbonner on Twitter, he plays very strange decks. He doesn't like to play. His deck profile, he plays like Earth Machine, Dark World, and now lately he's playing 60 card Libromancer Nouvelles. What you need to know about Nouvelles is that the deck actually has like a very good matchup against against Kashtira and Unchained and Rescue Ace, because most of their interaction targets, and if you target one of the rituals, you die. So my Tanner lost 2 rounds in a row. Round 3 plays against a Cash player who's also 0-2. Tanner summons the little one of the little ritual guys, and Cash player does a bunch of stuff, puts out a bunch of nonsense, and then has a Rise Heart attack into the little guy. And Tanner goes, okay, effect the little guy, tribute a Rise Heart. Huh? Mm-hmm. Tribute a Rise Heart to summon Bale Grill. And if you do not know what Bale Grill does, Bale Grill says if this card is summoned by the effect of a Nouvelles, Dark Ruler the whole board, spells, traps, monsters, everything, and then also tribute all monsters your opponent controls. So this is a full field of big Cash dinguses, gone. And then
that's just brutal.
They packed up their cards and left. So that was good. And then the rest of that day, just fun restaurants, karaoke. Karaoke night was good. There are some karaoke deck profiles that will be up soon if they're not up already. So those are fun videos if you want to check those out.
Karaoke deck profiles?
Yes. There specifically, my twin brother did his Nouvelles deck profile while I was singing Attention by Charlie Puth in the background. You just want attention. Anyway, it is a legendary video. It's very good. definitely I recommend watching it. I'll probably link it in the description. It's too funny.
Please do.
Yeah. Day 2, we just played a bunch of side events. What was cool is that the new mat for Rivalry of Warlords is the art for Libromancer origin story. And so Tanner was very happy about that. Kevin ended up winning the mat for him at Rivalry of Warlords. I played in the charity event as like my one side event. And I double sleeved my cards. Luckily, so for the dogs, I was like, I might have to play Dino or Crystal Beast on Sunday because I don't have the cards. There was a local shop. Shout out to Cute City Games that had everything but Fluffle Octopus. They had the rare dogs. They had extra copies of Fluffle Bear. They had basically the whole like extra toy vendors, extra Fright for Fusion, almost everything I needed to replace. And then I sat that octopus under as much weight as I could put on it. And then I double sleeved my deck, and it turns out double sleeving actually does help to resolve that issue. So as much as I don't like double sleeving, I think I will just have to do it going forward to avoid that issue.
Yeah.
I think I will do outer sleeves rather than the inner sleeves. My last thing that I want to say is that I got to meet some really cool people, and I got to meet a couple fans of the podcast. Shout outs to Anthony, who came to talk. I had probably 5 or 6 different people come up to me and be like, "Hey, are you Skyhawk? I'm a big fan of the podcast." I signed a couple cards. There was one guy, Tanner and Kevin can attest to this, he was like, "Hey, you're Skyhawk from Twitter, right?" I was like, "Yeah, can you sign my card? I've been trying to get people to sign it." And the names on that card are like Patrick Hoven, Pack, the Team Samurai X1, Milano. And I was like, "You sure you want me out there, man?" It was a marshmallow that he asked me to sign. There's a story behind it. Apparently.
Yeah.
So I signed a marshmallow. I signed another card. I got to meet Jaxel MS of the Curry Bandits. When he saw me for the first time, he was like, "Damn, you really are giant." I was like, "Yep."
You really are. People think that that's just like a screen name. Nah, you're huge, dog.
I'm a tall dude.
Like Americans, Skyhawk is like 6'5", and for the non-Americans, you're like what, 2 meters?
Yeah, I think I'm 198 centimeters, or somewhere between 198 and 200. I haven't checked in like 6 years.
Big.
Yeah. I also got to meet the legendary Progression Series deck brewer. I Wish I Was Dead. Was there at the event.
That's awesome.
And, he is an absolute gem. I have a story to tell about him in a sec. And then I also got to meet Roar Carlos. Roar Carlos and I Wish I Was Dead.
Super nice.
A very fun match.
Super nice.
She is just fantastic to talk to. She is awesome. I'm a huge fan.
Yep. I met her at Nats.
Yep. Rourke is awesome. Aside from being a Tierlament apologist. So I guess I have 2 other things I want to talk about event-wise. I'm taking up a lot of space here, but I'm almost there.
You're good.
So in that room, so the event was I think it was only 720 players or 723 players, something like that. And I saw some people saying it was a small YCS. The quality of that player, like player for player at that YCS, was unreal. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, 20 of like the best European players in the game came over to play. Gabe Nets, Jin Kang Pham, Quantal Think. There are names I'm not remembering. Juhu An came. Like multiple Worlds competitors were like wearing their Worlds shirts and coming to play. And then for North American players, Steven Santoli, Jesse Kotton, Pack was there. There are names.
All the highlights.
Not pulling up. Just an insane high quality of player was there. Like,
yeah, I think, because I think Paulie was there too, right?
Yes, Paulie Aronson was there. Yep. Oh, I got to talk to Zara too. I totally forgot.
Awesome.
There's so much that gets kind of jumbled, but Zara was there dueling against people all day. So 5th rate duelist. Super fun to meet her as well. No, player was good. So I do have a story about I Wish I Was Dead that I have to tell. So
please do. This is your time.
We were on our way out of the venue, but I realized that I had lent a friend from locals my playset of Pot of Prosperity, so I had to go back. As I was going back, I got a message. I was having a conversation with Rocalos and I Wish I Was Dead. And I was saying the only card that I'm missing for my max rarity dinosaur deck is the Collector's Rare Pankratops. And I thought nothing of it. I just brought it up because Rourke was talking about missing like one welcome labyrinth. I think the quarter century. So, and then she's like, I side it out whenever I think I need to side one out so I can just keep the quarter centuries in.
Right.
So I check a message and it's, I wish I was dead with a picture of a collector's rare Pankratops. It says, meet me at meeting point red, you pee stinky doo-doo head. So I was like, okay, I will come meet you. We will make this happen. I'll make it work. So I go to meeting point red and he shows me the Pankratops and I'm like, okay, like I'm pulling out my binder. I'm getting everything. He's like, no, I have one thing to ask of you, but this is yours. And I was like, you cannot do this, man. This is like $160 minimum Canadian. I have to give you something. Like, we got to figure this out.
Man.
And he's like, no. All I want you to do is you need to tell MBT that he is a peener. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but you got it, man. So I showed him the mod chat. I tag, hey, at MBT Yu-Gi-Oh! I wish I was dead says you're a peener. And he goes, no. I'm not involved in this. You take my name out. This has to be from you. And it's like, all right, man. So I sent it. I showed him, and I did give him something because I cannot in good conscience take a CR Pank worth like a week of food.
A lot.
So I did have an extra collector's rare Fossil Dig and an extra collector's rare Xenomedioros, and I had a Chimera, the King of Mythical Beasts, the fusion guy that's kind of expensive. So I was like, dinosaurs for dinosaurs. Here you go. But that is how I got the collector's rare Pankratops from I Wish I Was Dead. MET Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a peener, and you are a saint. That is my tournament breakdown.
Wait, who's a saint?
I Wish I Was Dead.
Oh, yes. We all knew that though. So I was trying my ADHD said, Sonny, say this this whole time. But I was like, no. I'm going to wait until the end. I'm going to wait my turn. I'm going to be polite because I'm trying to be better about that.
No, I just took up 20 minutes, my guy. you can take all the turns you want.
I do that regularly. So I want to say first, you talked about Vancouver and how much you love Vancouver. My question is, we went to London together. I was there for that. The London public transport was also awesome. So my question is, how did you compare London versus Vancouver public transit?
Okay. London covers a wider area.
Sure.
They're honestly very similar. Like, it's you tap card in the gate, tap card to get out. Very easy.
Can you
easy
just
to
do
reload.
like your phone as you go through? Because like London, you can just tap your phone.
You can use your debit or your credit card. I think the reloadable cards, like, they give you a bit of extra money so that you don't have to do like the credit card fees for their transactions. Is I imagine what the situation there is. Also easier for them to track stuff probably. The reloadable card is super convenient to use. In terms of the trains themselves, they're good. I would say the London system is probably better just because of how much more area that it covers. But it honestly, at some point you're splitting hairs, right? And experiencing it for a second time, being like, wait, this is in a Canadian city. We could just have this in all of them.
Yeah.
Why don't we? In Edmonton, for example, we have the LRT, which is like a really crappy train station system that's not elevated, and so it means that it has to go in like specific areas, and construction for it is super disruptive all the time, and that projects always constantly get delayed and everything. And it's like, why don't we just have an elevated train system? Then that way the NIMBYs don't have a problem, and we're good. But the venue and
alas,
the food and the transport was amazing. Konami, please just have 2 Canadian YCSs, one in Vancouver, one in Niagara Falls. Just do it every year. It's that easy.
I'm so down. Because it was this weekend a year ago that we had Niagara.
Yes, correct.
And they didn't do it at Niagara this year. They did it at Vancouver. And honestly, I'm fine with that.
I think we should do both. Like 1 East Coast, 1 West Coast, 2 Canadian YCSs would change the game for everybody. People wouldn't necessarily have to feel like they would have to go to like one or the other if it's farther away from them, but they could do both if they wanted. It gets the East and the West Coast of the US, so it's cheaper for them to travel up for a YCS.
Yes, for sure. Personally, for me, I think that I don't know why we don't do more YCSs. I'm sure that if you talk to like a Konami rep, there's like a real legitimate like what's the word I'm looking for? I just had it in my
Logistical?
head. Yeah, logistical. I'm sure there's like a real logistical reason for that, but I can't come up with it other than Konami doesn't want to spend the money on venues, right? Which also I kind of understand, but realistically, there's no reason that we shouldn't have 2 YCSs a month every single month minimum, which I get it. We have like 3 or 4 this month, which is very much not the norm. But then we just don't have like any in October, as far as I'm aware, maybe 1. And then I don't think we have any scheduled for November or yeah, we have 4 this month, but it leaves a lot of people, unless you're like a pro player, where you're kind of, okay, well, I live in Florida, so maybe I can go to Cancun. That's an easy one to get to. And maybe I can go to Indianapolis because I can fly there kind of cheap-ish, whereas Vancouver or Rio, it being international, is probably a bit more. Then you have somebody who lives in Canada, maybe saying, well, I can go to Vancouver and I can go to Indy because I can drive there and it's not too bad. But then you have somebody in Mexico saying, well, I can do Cancun and I can do Rio because the flights are cheaper, but I can't go to these. Because you have to pick and choose which ones you're going to. Whereas I think if you spread them out, but more evenly, rather than doing 4 in 1 month, then maybe 1 and then 0, 0. If you do like 2, 2, 2, it makes it easy because like we knew with 1 in Rio, 1 in Vancouver, followed by 1 in Cancun, a break, and then 1 in Indy. We all know what the biggest ones out of those are going to be. It's going to be Cancun and it's going to be Indy, right? Followed by Vancouver, followed by Rio. That's going to be the order of attendance. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that when you have Rio, which was what, 600 players? It was 400. No, I'm sorry. It was 400 teams of 3. So 1,200. So actually, I'm sorry. Rio is quite large because I'm thinking of it in terms of like player count. Because the last Rio, I think, was 550 or 600 players, but this was teams. Mm-hmm. But when you have even 1,200 is like a pretty like modest size YCS. When you could spread them out, say maybe we waited a weekend and gave it a space for Vancouver, But to me, let's say you do 1 in Dallas this weekend, 1 in Buffalo, right? Then you wait 2 weekends or 3 weekends. Let's just make it like every 2 weekends. If you space it out, I don't know. I think having them clumped together just makes it hard for people because they have to pick and choose rather than saying, well, I can go to this one and this one because they're like further apart, paydays and stuff like that. I don't know. I might be thinking about this too much, but I feel like there's a way to situate them better and space them out better. But I don't know. I'm not in charge of event planning. I just try to go to ones I can go to. I don't know.
Yeah, and this is interesting. So I think, especially with a lot of discussion about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Local scenes are starting to suffer with the way product has been, YCSs are something that are not suffering. They're actually doing like very, very well.
Yeah.
This attendance was low, but I think that 700-ish attendance was expected for a new venue and because of the location. Obviously, the Toronto one was larger, but that's just like a larger population that can get to that event, right?
Well, it's not even Toronto; it's Niagara, right?
Niagara, yeah. It's real close, man. But
well, I think the only reason they don't have it in Toronto is because they had an issue with. Do what?
Well, the venue cost, I think, would be.
Yeah, I think the venue at Niagara was just so much cheaper, but honestly, I don't think it has anything to do with it being closer to NYC because you're talking about, 7 hours versus 6 hours drive. Right. So
I just mean closer
proximity to NYC.
Other, I just mean closer to other people in general, right? Like there's just a higher population density in that area. So
yeah, I guess.
Yeah. The other, but like YCSs continue to like be really, really popular and do well. So could be that maybe the scenes are just going to start to concentrate around those big events, at least in the last little bit. So I would love to see more.
We got Canadian stream too for the first time, right?
No, we did not. So
I thought there was supposed to be.
Nope, it was never announced. We did get the Team
Oh.
YCS in Sao Paulo. We got day 2 streamed, but Canada still does not have a
Right.
stream. And frankly, that is embarrassing.
Crazy.
Like,
That's crazy.
it is frankly unbelievable that they still have not figured out some way to make it happen. And we have, like, there are people here who could commentate that event so well. Like, for example...
Tombox is local.
Well, so Tombox was judging.
Yeah,
Nishi,
sure,
so
but
Nishi,
he could have.
yeah, Nishi was writing articles actually. He was doing some of the written event coverage on the Yu-Gi-Oh
Okay.
blog. So they're starting to like maybe get there, but it's slow going. They should just have a stream for it. It's ridiculous that they don't. And there's not even, I guarantee you there's not a legitimate reason. Like it's unbelievable. But
It could be something to do with like transporting the equipment across international lines being kind of a hassle. But to be honest with you, Canada should have more than 1 or 2 ICSs a year anyway. So maybe give them their own equipment. I don't know.
Yeah, any hurdle is overcomable by a giant company is what I will say.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Konami's a huge company, like really big company that makes a lot of money. There's no real reason to not do it.
Yep.
So
I guess. No, you go ahead.
I did want to. Yeah, I had just a couple more comments. How I want to ask. That's kind of like a brutal thing to have happen, right? Because you had a pretty rough situation at Niagara, and then London went really well, especially because I was there. But also a rough situation at Vancouver. So, respectfully, if I might ask, because I think that this adversity is something that a lot of people experience. And I know that it hasn't been very long. It's only been a day or two, and it's still really fresh and it hurts. But I am curious as to your mental process for overcoming that adversity going forward. Because it's really easy for people. I have my own issue with this, going to tournament after tournament after tournament and not performing to the expectation that I set for myself. So I'm wondering, how you in your head overcome that, because it can be a mental block and it can be something that's difficult to overcome, right?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not there yet. I think I am different from most people when it comes to that stuff, in that I have no problem with losing. Like that is something that's gonna happen. Like I've been to regionals and been like 1 win off, and that can be frustrating, but that's not a turn off to like either not continue playing or take a break or whatever. But to go out to spend a month building a deck that has an edge against a section of the format in a window of opportunity where people had started to cut droll and were pulling back on main deck hand traps, in a window of time where we had a month of an entire Discord server working on text for the desk and testing it out at different regionals and locals and figuring out what worked and what didn't, making like a whole spreadsheet, preparing a video, right? Losing with that, like getting to play out the rounds, not making day 2, or maybe making day 2 and flaming out there, would have been like fantastic, because that tells us what works and what doesn't. That tells me what needs to change and what I need to improve, right?
Right.
Going out this way doesn't have any of that. Doesn't have any of that closure. It doesn't have any of those results to speak to. It just has an opponent who decided that they wanted a free win because they didn't want to play it out. And the guy had like an ARG mat, so they were an alt head, so they knew what they were doing.
Right.
And that type of stuff has happened to me quite a lot in the past. I have lost out on my first YCS top in the final round of an event because my opponent lied to a judge. And that moral hazard at a high level of competitive play is something that is impossible to avoid. That to me is what is discouraging, and that to me is what is tricky to overcome. I'm not in a place yet where I can say that I'm over what happened, although karaoke helped. But and it was still it was still a good experience overall. But I don't have any tips for overcoming that, because it's a there's no way to win in that situation. I could have been more careful and more prepared. I could have had spare copies of all of my cards, but for a lot of people, that's not realistic to do, especially when you're traveling long distances, to have a second copy of your deck. For me, maybe it would have been more reasonable to have a spare copies because I'm playing something that the vendors might not have. But this is not something I have ever encountered before. Like, I have never in my life have I ever been like called for marked cards for any reason, right? And it is heartbreaking and frustrating, and I don't know where I will be with the game in a while. But what I will say is that you can step away without leaving entirely. I was talking to my twin brother about this. He plays fighting games. He's a fighting game player, as is Kevin. He's playing the Vanquishal deck, which makes that very funny. But
speaking of, we need to circle back around to that.
Yeah. And he was talking about you can kind of enter like soft retirement, right? He's like, a lot of the time going to events becomes a social thing instead of a competitive thing. So he's like,
right,
if you feel like you can't overcome that moral hazard problem, or you don't want to like join the group doing that stuff, then you can still keep up, but you don't have to like be super competitive or be in that space anymore if you don't feel like you can deal with that. And events can be more of a social thing. So I don't know where I am at with that yet, but we will see. So that's I wish I had good advice. I don't have it.
Yeah, I think it's really understandable. Like I said, it's something that's really fresh, and I appreciate you speaking on that because I know that it's not something that you're settled in on yet, right? Because it is so fresh. But if I might offer my own personal input, and this is something that I thought about after the last time we talked, because we talked Saturday after it happened. And this is something I thought about a little bit. And I'm sorry to spring that on you because I know it hurts.
No, I think it's valuable for people to hear a more honest discussion about that, because losing is part of the game. Having judge calls happen to you is a part of the experience, and crushing defeat and sadness is also part of the experience when you set any kind of expectation in anything. So I agree. Sometimes you have to know when to be able to push through those barriers, and sometimes you have to know when to cut bait. And so I'm not sure where I'm at that yet. I haven't made that decision. So I guess that's the way to put it.
I guess I should say that. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is I faced a similar thing fairly recently where I realized that for one reason or another, I was not going to be able to play the game at the highest competitive level that I wanted to play it at. Whether it's I don't want to constantly reinvest money into buying new cards to play newer decks, or whether I don't want to constantly be, trying to learn this new thing that comes out in 2 weeks, or I don't want to devote that much time to learning the intricacies of a format that realistically I play very rarely. I haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh in like a month, or more. I haven't even touched the cards except for sorting. And that's not for a lack of love of the game or boredom or disinterest. I'm just really busy. So it's hard for me. Like, I can kind of keep up with what's going on, but for me, it's really hard because of how busy I am with work and the podcast and my family. It's hard for me in my head to see events as anything other than a reason to go hang out with my friends. So I guess that's maybe where the difference in mentality is, because I've had those kinds of weird things happen at events to me, and I don't like it. I remember for YCS Charlotte last year, I really, really, really wanted to go in very hard and try very hard and do my best. I was playing Sword Soul at the time. I was pretty comfortable with the deck. I'd been playing it about 3 or 4 months. It was a very good deck at the time, but Prank Kids Adventure had just like really taken off. It was probably the best deck. It was the best deck. It won that event. And I remember round one, I sat down against my opponent. I said, man, I just really hope I don't see Adventure Prank Kids today because it's like the best deck, and I'm scared of that deck. I don't really know everything that it does. And my opponent goes, really? Dang, man. Yeah, that would suck. All right, good luck. Duelist, you may begin. All right, normal summon Fansies. Oh. So I think when you have that, and then that translates into like a bad tournament for me, where I end up in round 6 losing to Dino off of a pretty bad misplay. And I think when you take all that and bundle it into like, I traveled 14 hours. I drove overnight to get here, right? I'm running on 30 minutes of sleep in the last like 30 hours. And I'm doing all of this to play this game just to like just get rocked, right? Whether it's due to misplay or a judge call. And I understand like losing happens. I understand judge calls happen. I understand that like these things happen and they suck. But for me, losing is just as bad as that. They suck no matter how. I remember getting top 8 of a case tournament and getting a game lost because I had other cards in my deck box. And it was just heart-wrenching to me. I just like walked outside, walked out in the parking lot, and just like walked through the parking lot just because I was just disheartened, right? So
now, like, if we're being real,
I think like, though, for me, the mental shift though, like it's been the mental shift of like, oh, I'm going to see my friends. You know, I went to a tournament and didn't play like last month. I just didn't even play. I drove 4 hours to a regional just to see friends. And I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm saying though that my camera just shuttered. Okay, I thought my camera died because it's flashing red. But I don't know. I guess that sometimes you just have to like decide kind of what you want out of the game. And I want to see friends and other people want to be competitive. And I think that everything is okay and all those options are okay. It's just about finding where you're the happiest. Because if you're not happy, then what are any of us doing here, you know? I know that none of that made sense. And that was just kind of a long ramble, but
no, I think that's exactly the conversation. Yeah. That's exactly the conversation I'm having with myself, right? Like, right. Do I want to be the person that calls a judge because a card is a little bent out of shape? And by the way, that game 1 didn't do me any favors. My hand was Patchwork, Edge of Sabers, Sharvara. I was ending on Rage Escape that game. So that is the conversation I'm having with myself though, is what relationship do I want to have with it going forward? Because do I want to stay competitive, but do I want to keep it like online, and then I don't have to worry about all of the crappy stuff that happens at top tables? It's tough because I'm pretty competitive by nature. I played a lot of basketball growing up, and I tend to I like to win, and the 1v1 experience is there's nothing quite like that head-to-head battle, right? But
yeah,
I don't know, but it is something to think about. I think you're right that you have to examine your relationship with the game and what you want out of it, and I don't know what that is right now, so we'll find out. But while I do have the knowledge fresh in my head, if we have time, we can talk a little bit about the results. How are we doing?
Well, let's first off, tell me how much time we have left.
That is a great question. I'm going to do a little quick peeky tab out and find out how long we've been recording.
Because now that I'm not recording my stuff and you're doing it all through Discord, I genuinely have no idea.
We're at about 40 minutes, so I think we have time to talk about the results.
We got plenty of time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about whether or actually, before we do, we're going to take a very short little breather from this was a heavy talk. I think it's an important one for people to hear because examining your relationship with the game is important. But before we get into results, before I forget, we had a comment on Spotify, because on Spotify you can do like a Q&A and like leave your feedback.
You're gonna make me do this and then you're gonna roast me? Okay. All right, I see how it is.
Yeah. Well, I gotta cheer you. So, a while back, we had a Vanquish Soul discussion, upon the release of Wild Survivors, I said that I do not think that the Vanquish Shoal deck will be worth more than, I either said $250 or $300. I don't remember which. Might have even been $350. I genuinely don't know. I don't think it'll be worth, let's just say $300 for ease of conversation, in 4 months' time. Well, the set released in June, which is the 6th month? Or did I say 3 months or 4 months? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. The deck's only worth $200. So I got flame for it because it's their 7 ultras. Ooh. Well, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it turns out for a while the deck was topping like once every event and did not make top cut of this event. It is not there. So
well, turns out there's something better.
I concede. I was wrong. If anybody remembers what the bet was, feel free to bring it back.
We're gonna put the counter on the screen right here. Bing.
Neither of us remembers if we bet anything or if there was one. So if
we have no idea. But I know that the sunniest correct counter went up 1 instead of down 1.
I will tell you what. Well, for that, I will clean slate the sunny misinformation counter. You are at 0 right now. You're at
sunny misinformation counter to 0. Oh, boy, all right. Well, time to let's see if we can change that. Let's see if we can make that number go higher. All right. So let's talk about.
We are actually this might be it. We just did a whole conversation about you being like, yeah, I haven't played in a month. Anyway, let's talk about the Vancouver meta game.
So I would like to put forward the case that Jesse Kotton is, at this point, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time in this game's history. Because he won again. This is his 5th YCS win and 6th Premier event win, if you include his UDS win, which I'll admit the
also,
UDS win is basically a superpower. It boosts the consistency of making top cut by like 1 million. But it doesn't matter. It's still insanely, ridiculously impressive. And to win with Unchained, kind of really showing how good that deck is. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Jesse has the best case. And there's a YCS next weekend. Anyway, just some food for thought there.
I'm just gonna say, if Hoban comes back and wins next weekend,
Hoban topped
the debate will rage.
Hoban topped this one. He's back in swing.
He topped the one. He got top 4 at Rio.
So, I think that's true. Actually. I believe his team made top cut.
I'm almost positive they were top 4.
So, YCS Vancouver top 32 breakdown. I think we probably kind of have to go through this before we can kind of talk about Unchained's position. And Jesse actually posted a video we can talk about real quick.
Which is absolutely worth a watch.
Yes, it's super insightful. Fascinating to just kind of hear his like unfiltered thoughts after the event. The most represented deck in top cut is Unchained with 9 out of the top 32, which is not that unsurprising, but the amount is maybe a bit shocking. Followed by 6 Dragon Link, which I think people were not expecting as much of this deck, so I think Dragon Link really overperformed.
Go ahead. I was gonna say I'll give my thoughts on that statement afterwards.
Okay. I personally thought there wouldn't be as much of it, but there being more Unchained means it makes more sense. There's a profitable banish in the Yama for the Bastiles. Followed by 5 Pearly. Deck still, even with everybody and their mother main decking Book of Eclipse and Book of Moon, Pearly still performing very well. Followed by 4 Kashtira, which I think is the lowest it's been at any event in a long time. 2 Fluwanderies, which is actually an interesting development. And then followed by the one-ofs of Branded Chimera, Labyrinth, Infernoble, which did get top 8, Rescue Ace, Sprite, which was Dinkang Fam, and Manadium. So it's a rather varied metagame, but with a few like very clear top contenders. What are your thoughts, Sonny?
Okay, so I'm I'm looking up card text to make sure that I give accurate information because as much as I joke about the counter, I don't want it to go up.
All right.
Okay, so I had a conversation with a friend today about why Unchained is so insanely good. Not just why Unchained is good, but why Dragon Link being the second most representative deck is not indicative of the deck overperforming at this particular event, but indicative of the deck being the second best deck in the format, especially now that Unchained is prevalent within the meta. So I think the biggest key card that you need to look at is Bestial Druisworm specifically. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one special summon monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. This essentially makes Bestial Druisworm a 3 of in the deck, whereas before it was pretty normally like 3 Magnamut and like 2 to 3 Saronir and 1 to 2 Druisworm. You were playing like 6 to 8 Bestials, and when it was being played as like a hand trap lineup, and I don't really think that you were playing 3 of all of them even in the Dragon Link deck. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a pro at this deck, or even in the meta right now. I don't know. But generally, from what I'm used to, you don't play 3 of everything. But Druisworm specifically now is so much better because it does not destroy an Unchained card. It sends, making Druisworm now a 3 of, which is why even if you look at the tins, the Magnamuts are $4 for the secret rare out of the tin, whereas Druisworm is 10.
Like the Druisworm, I think, is
10.
the most expensive card in the tin now, which is wild.
And it's because of its impact in the Unchained matchup, right? Now, I understand that not all of the Unchains, I think they're all Fiend, but they're all kind of like different typings a little bit here and there, or attributes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But even having those slightly different attributes, there's enough light and dark for it to still be impactful to have the Bestials. So when you combined the Bestials still being impactful with Druisworm specifically being so impactful, I think that, and also Hieratic Heavenly Spheres is impactful, being able to bounce, right? Like the types of interaction within D-Link specifically are kind of tailored to beat the Unchained matchup.
Yep.
Now, what makes Unchained so interesting is that, I'll be honest, I was on my phone when you were talking. I might be repeating what you said. I have no idea. But, yeah. Specifically into the Unchained matchup, Kashtira is still very good, but I think it's really important to note, and Kashtira is not the best deck anymore. There's been a lot of discussion of players, potentially these high-level players like Jesse Kotton and Pack and whoever else, not playing Kashtira because they felt like the deck... Oh, my camera died. Hold on. Oh, we're going to switch cameras now because my camera died.
True.
Oh, yeah. Look at that drop in quality.
We got
So
you.
I think there's a lot of discussion that was had about Kashtira still being the best deck and just not seeing the lines or just not seeing the amount of play because people are like, oh, it's going to get hit by a ban list, or oh, it's going to get reprinted, or whatever, right? So they sell all their cards, or oh, the deck's really boring and easy to play. So these people have all these reasons that people aren't playing the deck. Well, that's just not it. It's just that Unchained is actually the best deck. And this is evidenced by people like Pack, people like Jesse Kotton, people, whoever you think the best players are right now. They're probably all in that one Discord server that's got like 10 people. And they're probably all playing Unchained or Pertly.
There's an interesting anecdote, actually. So Marcus Patel and Aaron McInnes, 2 very strong European players. Marcus Patel, you may know, as he
won nationals with Sun Avalon,
Sun Avalon the year before Jess did. And Aaron McInnes has like topped a bunch of events and regionals and stuff. Very strong player. Marcus Patel posted, he was like, so he topped the event and he was like, I played Unchained. I brought Rescue Ace. And then I played a bunch of matches with Rescue Ace against Aaron playing Unchained, and I realized it was an unwinnable matchup. So I switched to Unchained. And he's like, I did not have much experience with the deck, and I got top 32. And it's like, I think a lot of decks are going to come to that realization that actually they can't beat Unchained. Like,
yes,
So one thing that Jesse Kotton talks about in his video, and also Jesse Kotton is citing 2 copies of Druisworm for exactly that reason. Even in Unchained, just playing the Druisworm is worth it.
Yes. It's just a good card.
So in Jesse's video, he talks about whether he should be using board breakers to beat the board or whether he should be using hand traps to stop it from happening. And he's like, I went with the board breakers because I think it's a better option. But honestly, they both kind of suck. And when you look at the side deck options you have against Unchained going first, or there are some better options going first. Abyss Dweller, if your deck can make it, is probably the strongest. But the interactions into Kashtira are such that, like, Unchained doesn't really care that much about Droll at all. And it doesn't care about Dimension Shifter, really. Like, yeah, it stops the Sarama, but you can play through Shifter. Or not the Sarama. It stops, well, it does kind of stop Sarama. It stops the Sharvara search, but the Unchained cards just have to be destroyed. They don't have to be sent to the graveyard. So you can easily push through Dimension Shifter.
Right.
Coincidentally, you can also very easily shift through a Rise Heart. And that means that Kashtira, which already had consistency issues and a lot of people were playing because of the power, now has a matchup that's not great. Suddenly, when you have a deck that has consistency problems and a good deck with a matchup that's not great, you don't want to play it anymore because you'd rather play the thing that beats Cash. So people are off of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think lists have evolved, and I think we will see Cash players retool, but they're not going to go back to the top.
What worries me is the possibility of Kashtira not getting hit on this ban list.
No. They need to ban a Rise Heart, and barring that, they've got to ban Birth. The problem is, like, a lot of decks that I think could play well in this format still are locked out by the existence of Cash.
Yep.
Like, and I think people are still having to play cards for that matchup that ideally they wouldn't have to. So I think, I think it still has to go. I hope that they don't. I do think, however, there are some decks that we can probably not hit now that we've seen this. One Sprite top this event. Top this event. No,
I think Sprite may have been power crept.
No Runics top this event.
Runic. I don't know if Sprite and Runic has... I don't know if they've both been power crept, but they don't feel as good as they did 6 months ago. Yeah. I know that.
So people are also busting out some absolutely wild tech to play. The most famous one for this event. So Jesse Kotton is signing 3 copies of Marionette Might, which, if you don't know, is essentially hand trap. Well, it's not a quick effect, but from the hand.
Think about Electric Virus.
Yeah, it's Electric Virus for fiends and zombies. I could see. So what's interesting about this is that there are some decks that could play like Zombie World as a floodgate to deal with Unchained, because it stops them from making Yama and does some other fiend stuff that you can't do. But if you play Marionette Might, Zombie World is not very effective against Unchained. So, like, you have the side, like, but the fact that you have to reach that deep into the pool is, like, indicative of how big a problem it is. You can't really get away with Gravekeeper's Inscription unless your deck can already play it. Your deck has to be able to make Abyss Dweller, right? DD Crow is like...
Inscription, I think, has the same problem, because the other big card I saw a lot of people talking about was deck lockdown. I think it's going to run into a similar issue. You
have to be able to play under it. I've seen people post just like Runic, Amano, Iwado stun with like main deck lockdown and Gravekeeper's Inscription, Time Tearing Morganite.
And if that's where we're at, then that deck's good.
Exactly. Like, if that's what the depths we're reaching to, we got a problem. There can be only one is like, I think the only like real blowout going first that does what you want.
Right. I think it's also worth considering which decks have the kinds of interaction that interact well with Unchained. So I mentioned this before we were recording, and I stand by it. I think Sword Soul is probably going to be a great choice into the Unchained matchup. I don't just say that because I love Sword Soul. If you really think about the types of interaction that Sword Soul presents, being able to shuffle with Baxia, being able to non-targeting banish with Chang Ying from both field and grave. If you look at even, the Tenyi Berserker, the Synchro 8, he banishes, right? Yazi can't be targeted. You have these different kinds of interaction that make, even if you look at, say, the Qijing Longyan where if they special summon or activate, he banishes and burns. He doesn't destroy.
Yep.
Right? That's kind of the perks of Konami building these decks that have these varied types of interaction, is that sometimes they interact really, really uniquely with each other. Even having the ability to, if you can, like, say, normal summon an Adhara, right? If you have a Vishuddha in your hand, you can bounce the Caesar that they have on board. You know, and that one's a bit more specific, right? Like, Caesar might be a bigger issue to deal with. But I think in that situation, like, I think your build is basically playing like 3 imperms, and then you're probably playing things like talents and board breakers and dark ruler or whatever. Even though, no, not dark ruler, because dark ruler is probably terrible into the matchup. But you understand what I'm saying with like these varied kinds of interaction, and maybe, I don't know, you're just really gonna have to look at deck construction and what decks interact the best with Unchained, because I think right now Unchained is the best deck.
And I think importantly, it's going to be decks that both can take advantage of how Unchained interacts and how you can interact with it, and decks that take advantage of the cards that people are playing now to beat Unchained. A deck that made top 8 at this event that I think we will start to see more of is Infernoble. If people are shifting to board breakers as the mechanism to beat the Unchained deck, but they're not playing Dark Ruler specifically, because Dark Ruler isn't very good into the Unchained matchup, Infernoble has a very good time. Their board plays quite well into stuff like Talents and Thrust, because they end on the 2 of the Charles, and that's a double spell trap negate. And it also plays quite well through interaction, so if people are only playing like 1 high impact hand trap, you can play through it. Especially now that Droll is starting to fade out, although honestly the deck doesn't really fold to Droll at all. So I'm not surprised at all that Infernoble made top 8. I think we'll see more of it. I think one final thing I want to say is that if you have a rogue deck that you think you can pilot well, this is the format to be trying to play it in. When people are teching for Unchained and it's starting to now move into that concentration, you can start to pull it out. There was a player who was 7-0 on Blackwing and then lost the last 3 in a row. So Blackwing almost topped this YCS. There were
what could have been.
Yeah, tons of stuff in that room that could have hit that 1-of slot. The last thing that I want to mention is that 2 Fluwanderies is also not a joke. Not only is this deck unbelievably cheap because of the tin reprints of Advent, so long as you have Prosperities, it is actually quite good. It is very funny that Fluwanderies, I think, is actually like probably maybe the deck that has the best matchup going second into the Unchained board, because you cannot activate Rage, because Rage specifically has to be a special summon monster, and Caesar specifically is special summons. So Fluwanderies doesn't really play into their board at all. So the only disruptions that the Unchained player has at their disposal are Abominable Soul and then Escape of the Unchained. So Fluwanderies plays quite well into their board. It's just a matter of like defending from the crackback, right? So there are those decks exist that have reasonable matchups with Unchained, but they are few and far between. They have other weaknesses, and the cards you can play to beat Unchained are weird, and you often need multiple of them. So Jesse Kotton said it best in his video. He was like, I am not saying that Unchained is tier 0. I don't think we're there yet. He's like, but we may be heading in that direction, because the more I think about it, the harder it is to beat this deck. It's wild.
Well, I think that is a great place to stop that part of the discussion. We have a couple of things that we want to hit on very lightly, some discussions that were had on Twitter. But before we do that, why don't you tell me where we are at on time again? Because we're probably getting really close.
We are at 59 minutes. We are at almost an hour.
All right. Well, we'll do both of these extremely quickly.
Let's do it.
We got the reveals for the structure deck, for the Jack Atlas structure deck. The deck is like fine, I guess. I don't look at this deck as being something that's going to produce a competitive meta contending deck. But what I do look at it is a wasted opportunity to reprint Pot of Prosperity. I guess maybe they're trying to push it in the rarity collection, but like, I guess, whatever. I mean, the card's going to be cheap after the rarity collection.
Yeah.
I just hate that it still won't have a common, because nothing in the rarity collection is getting a common. Right? Like, you can go get your ulti where you can go get your collector's rare or your quarter century secret rare or whatever you want. But the card's not going to be expensive. Even the supers are going to be like $2, $3, $4.
Yeah.
I don't think anything in that set is going to be expensive on a card by card basis, because I think you can get the supers of any card in this set unless they're short printed. That's going to be the key, like printing ratios or whatever. But the card's going to be cheap. My issue though is that it's been over a year since the card's been reprinted. There's not really an excuse for this card to still be $30 to $40, and it single-handedly prevents people from playing decks. Like, I kind of want to play Unchained, but I can't. I kind of want to play. I really want to play Chimera, but like, all the deck lists are playing Prosperity, and that's for a reason. It's because it's good.
If you want to play
like,
Flu as your anti-meta deck, the rest of the core is cheap. Gotta have Prosperity, because it's like you can play Jack in the Hand,
but like you're not gonna.
Yeah.
So anyway, they put Extrav in here. They should have, the one in the OCG structure was Extrav also, but they also have already had accessible printings of Prosperity, and we have not. So it's hard for me to find a silver lining when Extrav has 5 released printings already, including a structure deck common and a gold rare, both of which are about $1. And Prosperity has 2 released printings. The reason I say released is because technically there's a pot collection printing coming, and then technically there's the rarity collection, but the rarity collection is still 2 months away. So like, does that even count? I don't think so.
Yep.
All right.
I do one other thing about very quickly about the structure deck is that Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity is in this structure deck, which means if we get a ban list this month or next month, frankly, Calamity will not be on that list. So be prepared.
Not necessarily.
Be prepared for Calamity luck. I don't think either it means that they're going to ban it and print it anyway, or it means that we're not getting the ban list until after the structure deck releases, and that would suck.
Didn't they just reprint a banned card recently? They'll do anything.
That was branded Expulsion. I mean, I guess they will do anything, but like Expulsion was a common, right? This is like a core part of the game plan for the deck. So I would like to see them do the right thing. I don't know that they will. They could. I mean, they could just ban Crimson Dragon too, but like whatever.
I mean, you also had like the Punk deck doing it like early in the day when O-Line was released, or like when O-Line came off the ban list. I don't know, like
that was Hulk.
April of last year. It was like the Hulk deck was doing it.
The quick synchro setups
it's been done before.
The quick synchro setups are way more vulnerable to other forms of interruption, whereas the Crimson Dragon tag out, it's like it has to be a quick play spell in the draw phase. But anyway.
All right. The other thing that I want to touch on very quickly. We did mention we were going to talk about it. I would feel bad if we didn't now. Playmats with or without zones. Go.
Okay, so this originated from a Reddit post. Somebody posted, I think that playmats without zones should be banned. And that is, first off on its face, that's a wild
CMV.
Take. Uh-huh. Yeah. CMV. I think in an ideal world, I actually agree with them. My view is that when you can take any step to eliminate cheating or reduce confusion for new players, you should take it. However, I think the circumstances with which this comes up are limited. So I'd say it's probably not necessary, but I would be in favor of the change. I think it's objectively better to have that be the change, but it's not such a pressing issue that it needs to be addressed in that way, is my view.
I broadly and vaguely agree. However,
I love that statement.
I'm not going and putting a highlighter to my Spellgrounds, and Konami doesn't make nice enough cloth mats for me to have a playmat that has zones. So, with that said, I want to use a high quality playmat both to protect my cards and to have a more enjoyable experience with the game. I think that a more reasonable middle of the road solution here, a compromise, would be to make usage of field centers mandatory.
Agreed.
As well as getting judges to enforce the proper use of zones within the game state. So For example, when you go to your locals and you see that dude with like the calculator case with all the pens and like the cards in it, and he's got a TI-84 graphing calculator, and he's got the spell grounds, and he's got his deck up in the upper right-hand corner with the graveyard below it and the banished pile below that. That shouldn't be like that. You can call a judge on that. That's totally a reasonable thing to call a judge on, because that's completely not allowed. Like, you go watch a Konami stream, they don't let him do it on the stream. There's a reason for that. The reason that it's laid out like that, or it's not the reason that it's laid out like that, but the reason that it makes sense for it to be laid out like that in the modern age is because you are the only person touching your deck unless it is being cut. So that deck, that can be closest to you. The graveyard, however, is public knowledge. Your opponent can just like, hey, can I see your graveyard? Grab it, fan it out, look at your whole graveyard, put it back, and put it back. Like, they can just grab your graveyard and look. Like, yeah, like, be polite, ask permission first, sure. But, like, they can just look. Same thing with the Banish Zone. Face-up Banish cards are public knowledge. So it makes sense for these things to be here where they're accessible for your opponent. I think it was Josh Nick, I think, a head judge, came on Farfa's stream at some point and did like an hour-long interview. It was a great discussion, and this was one of the things he mentioned. And ever since he said that, I'm like, wow, he's just objectively correct. But I think use of a field center and a little bit of common sense. When you're sitting down in a match, look at your opponent and go, hey, that trap card or spell card that you set in your back row is kind of in, you know, not really defined area. Can you just, you know, help me out? Which column is that in? I'm just trying to be, you know, be clear, because that takes 10 seconds and it's really easy to do. And if somebody asks you to do that, you need to not be a piece of crap. Just acknowledge, oh, my bad, you're right, this is like really ambiguous, let me just like clarify, this is being placed in the center column, you know, and let's move on. That's all you need.
Yep,
you know?
I'm with you. I think new players don't have that base of knowledge to know that they can ask that question. So
sure.
I think maybe it could make it more clear for people, but like there's also tons of things like that you need to know at like at a higher level. So it's just something to add to the stack, I guess. But I think it's an interesting discussion because it's like an interesting new player experience versus like experienced players at X level event. It's like it's something that we got to reckon with. So I think this person was being unfairly roasted for this take, because I actually think in an ideal world they're right, but I do think there's a lot more nuance than
that person saying back,
why
are you booing me?
Yeah,
I'm
right. All right.
Well, let's go ahead and thank all of our patrons. Let's thank the patrons. Well, okay. So thank you, of course, to Bring Red Reboot Back to 3, Kane Martin, Zyphorus, Big Stinky, Blue Eyes is Best, Copium, Ding Dong's Hostess of the Yang Zing, Free My Homie Gazelle, he said he's sorry. Gold Secrets coming back when, Konami? True. I like Gold Secrets. HGH Shiber, I used to play Rogue, but then my mom got a job. Is Canada Nickelback? John Leo, Level 4 Fire Warrior Gaming. Mountain Man, Oatmeal Spaghetti, and Alvarado, Pistol Place Pendulum. She droll on my lock till I bird. Silver Hope, understanding and reading are two different things. Virtually Savior's World. As anyone read Toy Vendor, it's kind of like reading Miss Scars, Aaron Gardner, Alexander Chan, Asami, Ashlish Chaps, Atsuyo, Sympathy Silver Castle, Blackwing Silver in the Ascendant is the best floodgate. Boxwine, come on and get your game on. Duty Booty, Dragon Maidenless Behavior. I'm about to read your Glimmer Trooper across these plant nuts in your mouth. Cam, the Anti-Magical Hat Sky, Max C Pack, Neshi, Old Man Red, Pinko 143, and Slaking It Up. Thank you all so much for your continued support of the podcast. And of course, be sure to check out all of our affiliate links in the description down below. And of course, be sure to today, as of this airing, go check out Farfa's Subathon. It is probably still going. And if you tune in today, you can actually see our own avian individual. He will be on Farfa Subathon doing fluffle gaming and spreading the good word of the podcast, just like you should be to all your friends at locals.
I will be on Farfa Subathon tomorrow. I don't remember the exact time. I believe it's 2:30 UK time. So do the math. But
Skyhawk, do you realize that like 7 o'clock in the morning for you?
It's a 7-hour difference, so it is it's 9.
Like 7:30 in the morning.
It's 9. It's 9:30 for me. No, you're right. It's 7:30. No, you're right. It's 7:30.
I was about to say, I think you did your math wrong.
No, I realize. Because I work at 12, this is the best way for it to make it work. So I will be up bright and early.
Oh boy.
Yep.
Let's do like PhD level combos at 7:30 in the morning. That sounds like it's gonna be great.
Listen, this conversation last YCS tidbit, and then we can get out of here. This conversation came up while we were at karaoke drunk. We were like, so my friend Sam from Locals was like, hey, you, so like, how can you do like the fluffle stuff? Like, can anybody do what you do? And I was like, listen, there are probably 5 people who are living. It's David from the Regional Grind, and myself, Ease, and Synapse and Outback probably are the only people who can do the fluffle combos at a high level. And I was like,
yes,
and I'm the only person who can do them drunk. And that's so I think I will be okay.
That deck's so crazy. I think that deck got labbed by people like that magical 10-person Discord server that's back to back at the moment. I think that deck could be labbed into infinity, but I don't think the deck list gets any better. I think they just learn the combo lines and realize it's the best deck in the room. I don't think the deck gets any better.
Okay, it's definitely not the best deck in the room. I do think it can play right now, though. Sometime this week, I will have a very long video tutorial out showing everybody how to make it work, so that they have a month to play it before it goes.
I think that you are selling it short. I think it actually is the best deck right now, and it's just that it's not being played by enough people for the representation to translate.
I appreciate your faith. That's all the time we have for today. I don't have a card pun for you. This is the collector's rare Pankratops that I got from I Wish I Was Dead. The camera does not do it justice. It is beautiful. I Wish I Was Dead. You are the GOAT. MBT is a peener, and we will see you all next time.
Take care, everybody.